Admin report number 2218, budget for the Condil Hotel acquisition and demolition.
I have questions.
Okay. There's probably a few of them. Did you want a recommendation or did you want to have a conversation and then a recommendation?
Conversation and recommendation, if that's allowed, Your Worship.
Well, it's entirely up to you. It's council's agenda, so you're on, Councillor Boland.
Thanks, Your Worship. Before the recommendation's made, I'd like discussion, if staff's okay with that. I have some questions just regarding the project.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Your Worship, I'd just like to let you know that in the audience, we have two representatives from NAP Enterprises Industries, Barry Barnes, who's the president of the company, and Mike Tataran, who is one of their lead estimators. So if we have additional questions, the expertise is in the audience.
Excellent, thank you. A ton of information, a ton of questions, and of course, it came out last week as far as this big surprise to the community as to a 36% increase since the original quote had come in. So I'm curious, what percent of the scope of work, including the 4 additional amendments, have been done, not including this large one? What percent are we at? Is the project 22% completed?
10%.
10%?
That's a good
8%?
question.
That's a very good question.
Do you know that question?
I don't have the invoices in front of me for what's been billed to date, but I believe the project is estimated, of the original contract, it's an estimated about 45%.
45% billed to date
Of the original.
of the original 457.
Yes, because I believe all of the hazardous materials that was in the original, in the tendered project has been completed. And
Otherwise, he can't hear him.
I'm Barry Barnes with NAP Enterprises Limited. I've done work for the city of Fort St. John for approximately 22 years now. My first project was actually in this building, in council chambers, where we took the asbestos out of the ceiling. We've done several demolitions in the community over the years, including the Fort Hotel and another sports facility building that we took down a couple of years ago. We try and bring some fair value to the city, and this is one of these projects that has got a lot of unforeseen. I'd like to say that this is the first time this has ever happened to a city or a district, but it's not. So I came here today with an understanding that there would be a lot of questions, and hopefully I can answer some of them. So the first question from the councillor was about the amount of it that we've completed, and I believe we're about 45% complete to date.
45%. So about 205,650 billed of that 45%.
I'm guessing, because I don't do the billing in my company.
Okay.
But I'm sure that council could check that with the project, with their project managers, but I do believe the amount of hazardous materials that was in the original price was approximately 240,000, somewhere in there, and it's all been completed. So whatever those values are, which would be just over 50.
Okay.
If you wish, through you, Your Worship, to the councillor, we can have finance to check what's been built in the system to date. Come back with that answer.
Awesome, thank you. And part of that curiosity, as far as the scope is done, is the concern that I have is that the original quote was 457, or in and about that line. There was then 4 amendments that were done, and now this recent one that we're asked to do puts it from 457, then an $823,000 increase, which to me is a substantial amount.
I agree, it is substantial, yes.
So my concern, I guess, when I look at this, and part of it doesn't involve you, part of it involves our policy, which is not your issue, but my concern is our policy is to go with the lowest bidder. We go to the lowest bidder, which was yourselves at 457,000. We end up then being at 1.28 million, which is far exceeds even what the highest bidder was, which at that
Absolutely, I
time, you know,
understand.
at that time was a large amount. So I guess my concern, honestly, on the contractor point is, at what point in time do we say at an $823,000 increase, the remainder of the scope of the work should be bid? Because and I get there's unforeseen circumstances that you run into every day, no matter what kind
yeah.
of job you're doing. My concern is the amount of the increase that reflects on our budget of 1.5, our original of 1.5 million, including purchase price. It's significant. It's significant on our budget. It's significant to taxpayers. And I almost wish that we could get this information and be able to sit down with it in more of an open, I mean, not open meeting, but more of a work in progress to get this done.
So justification is what you're looking for.
Yes and no.
And, yeah, well, and you know what, and rightfully you should be looking for it, because it is a lot of money. And when these things, I have 4 project coordinators that work for me, and then I have 8 or 9 project managers, okay? So when these things come into our office, they don't come across my desk to start with. So they come in to the project, to whoever estimated, whoever's coordinated the project, they get the information, they gather, they put it all together, then they come up to my office with the price, okay? And then I look at it and I understand how governments work. This is my 27th year. I know that everybody in this room has to justify what we're spending, okay? Including me. So what I do is I take those numbers, especially with change orders. I take those numbers and I cross-reference them to what we bid, okay? And I try and find a relationship there. So for example, in this building, in our original tendered price, there was approximately 8,300 square feet of asbestos-containing plastered ceilings, okay? We bid to take those. So what I did is I look at our bid, I pull that out of our bid and see what it was and what it worked out to per square foot. And then I take the change order and I look at what they allowed for plaster ceilings and see if those two numbers fit and if they're comparable. If they're less than what we bid in our price, then I'm usually good with it and say, here, yes, the number falls in line. But if it's like 20% higher or 30% higher, then I'll go and ask why. Is it more complicated? Is there 9 layers to take out? What has to happen? So the 2 largest things in this change orders are the fact that all of the walls inside of the building over the years they crack and they break and they whatever. Well, when they leveled the walls out again, they used an asbestos-containing mud. We can't tell where all the patches are, because some of them they did a good job on, some of them they did a horrible job on. But the ones that have the horrible job on them, they stick out. So when the consultant come around and re-looked again, took samples, those are asbestos. So they deemed all of the walls asbestos in the building. So there's an additional approximately 23,000 square feet of 1-inch thick plaster at 11 pounds per square foot that we have to take out as asbestos-containing material. The original was only 8,800. So that is what? That's almost 3 times as much. So if I look at my numbers here, for example, I'll just shoot this one past you. Our original 8,800 square feet of plaster worked out to $158,400. That works out to approximately, I think I brought these, $18 per square foot, okay? So when I go to the change order, and then I go to change order number 4, I look at the plaster, and our number for extra plaster was actually only $19,175. So the $19,175, if you take the $273,699 that we've asked for to do the plaster removal, that works out to $14.27 per square foot. What was the original number? 18. So why is that so much less? Because the products that were upstairs had an asbestos sprayed on top of the plaster. So it's considered a high-risk procedure to take it out. The stuff with mud just periodically spread all over the walls is a moderate-risk procedure. So the level between the two is probably, based on experiences, probably works out to about $4 a square foot. So it falls in line to where it should be. So what I do with each of these items, I cross-reference them with the tender and make sure that when it breaks down to the unit price, it's either less or close to what we estimated. And I've done that with the plaster, and I've done it with the flooring products. The flooring products in that building, we found areas in that building where there's 16 layers of flooring. This is why you have the duct going through some of the doorways. There's areas of the building that have 3 layers. There's areas that have 12. You drill a hole there, and there's asbestos linoleum down in the bottom layer. So the consultant, another consultant came in and looked at it and told us that in order to get all of the asbestos out of this building, you take the onion, you peel it back to the core. Take all of it out. And there's only one way to do that, and unfortunately, it costs a lot of money.
So as the original engineer, the original report you received to base your bid off of was incorrect in his assumptions? Like, I've read the reports.
The original survey that was done on the building that was provided in the tender documents
Yes.
was the guy came to the site and there were still people living in the building.
Yeah.
When there's people living in a building, you cannot safely do a pre-demolition hazardous material survey because you have to pound holes in walls, you have to drill holes in floors, ceilings, roofs, exterior walls, everything. So when this project went out for tender, I do believe we were the one contractor that asked for an extension on it based on that.
So that's our question to answer, Your Worship. And so we did a hazardous material assessment as soon as we purchased the building in anticipation of tendering it for demolition. We asked that contractor to perform the work to the best of their ability. The problem is that the building has been added on to and renovated so many times over the years that the test holes were not indicative of what the actual situation was. But every person who bid on that job received the same information. So if we're extrapolating that a different bidder would have a different result today, I don't think that we can make that assumption. I think that anyone who had taken this contract would have discovered that the information that they had needed to be revised and would have revised the quote with that associated information. So just as long as we're clear that logic maybe doesn't apply to this situation.
It does if the remainder of the project's retendered, so that we can find out where this went so wrong.
If I could,
Go
maybe I
ahead.
could just jump in quickly. So the two things I want to say. One is with this facility in particular, it's really stuck together like a jigsaw puzzle. And so when they do these assessments, and everybody received the same information, and those bids were based on those assessments, when they do those assessments, it's hard to hit everything. So you're gonna find things when you start to go through this process.
Always.
It's not like buying a school, an old school, or an old municipal facility that's been from scratch, where you kind of know what to expect and what to find. This is 14 layers of flooring and all kinds of different additions and all that good stuff. The one thing that happens, so at some point in time, you have the assessments, you have to move forward. And when you move forward and the contractor finds additional materials that were not identified in the assessment, by law, according to WorkSafe BC, they have to stop and get reassessed. And that's what's happened. So a contractor by law has to stop, get the assessor back in, do another assessment, find out how much is there, and submit that change order. So protecting us as well as themselves.
So is that the stage we're at right now? The contract, you've stopped?
We stopped, what we did is we did everything that was in our scope of work and everything within the change orders that were approved to date. So that, we finished that up approximately the 21st of December. We were waiting for a report back. We missed the last council meeting because we got the report on the day of the council meeting, so we're here today. When we put this together, we were hoping to catch that first council meeting right after Christmas. So because we were just shut down through Christmas, we avoided any delay charges at all to the city. There's no labor day. In this cost, we don't have any labor delay charges. We don't have additional equipment delay charges. I hate that word, so we've avoided it. And, but unfortunately, it took us an extra 2 weeks, so our equipment is still sitting over there on the site, and that's fine. We have lots of it, so until the council makes their decision, it'll sit there and we'll just wait.
Okay, so I have a few other councillors with questions.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. Councillor Hanson?
So thank you very much for attending today and helping to answer some of these questions. And it would be of help to me to answer questions that I receive for site inspections. Could you help expand a bit more? Did you or your estimators do a personal inspection of the building? And if so, how many times?
So I would like to answer that because it's really not your job to defend the RFP process.
Okay.
So as part of the RFP, we did a hazmat assessment and we did a contamination assessment on the site, and we invited any proponent to do a walkthrough of the building. So that was done. In addition to that original hazardous materials survey that was done on August the 28th, there have been 4 additional hazmat surveys done on that building. 4.
Thank you.
Okay. That's it. Okay, Councillor Christensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can settle down because I get a little upset about this whole situation. Being a contractor for 37 years. If you bid on something, you accept your bid, first of all. When, through to Moira or to Wally, when we do the walkthrough, you do the walkthrough with the 3 contractors, do you identify the spots where they must drill to identify what's there? Or is that up to them?
That's up to the hazardous materials surveyor.
So
The
contractor
contractors
that
did not do any destructive testing on the building.
They used our reports.
They use an assessor for that.
So I'll just further on that, the Moira and her team hired an assessor to come in so that we could put it out to tender. So that happened. The first time they came in to do it, there was people still there, so they couldn't complete it. So they had to come back, do the second one, once everybody was gone. And the RFP was delayed, and that second report was added to that RFP. So based on that information, everybody submitted their bid. So now it's time to award the work. You award to the lowest bidder and you move forward. Once that work is awarded, as I indicated earlier, you don't know what's going to happen, right? I mean, you start peeling the onion back, you find more. By law, you have to stop. So you have to stop and report. And so the third assessment came because they found the layers on the wall. So we stopped, we had that other assessment done. My understanding with the fourth change order was that, in the big one, we started to proceed again, peel back the stucco, find this mud that had been done to put repairs in place years ago. So once again, the contractor by law has to stop work. So to quantify that work, you have to have an assessor come in, do the assessment, make an estimate of how much of that is there. And again, it's not a standard building. It's a jigsaw puzzle of a whole bunch of different rooms. So when they're doing their assessments, it's almost like spot checking, right? Okay, you know what? Let's drill a hole here. Let's drill a hole here. Let's smack this out and have a look. Let's look on this floor. And so you're gonna miss stuff. It's gonna happen in a facility such as this. So to take that, to stop it, once a big change order comes in and retender that, I think that I would suggest to council, if I may, that I would have to seek some legal advice on that. I'm not sure, giving our tendering laws and procurement policy, that would really be an acceptable approach.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for this. To my way of thinking, something's went sideways here. And Wally, you've touched on it, that is, this is not your normal building. I could have told you that. There's lots of people around the town that could have told you that you should have been looking for more than just what they found there. Those walls, when I was with the fire department, when we pulled those walls in that one fire, we knew they were asbestos in them. That lath and plaster, the old Forerunner gyprock, that's made up of asbestos. That should have all been found. I knew that they used linoleum in the old days with asbestos in it, yet it comes as a surprise when you drill down and find the asbestos. People should have known, as far as I'm concerned, what was involved in that building, that it was a piecemeal building, that it could have anything in it. And they should have done, whoever did the assessment on the asbestos, as far as I'm concerned, didn't do a good job.
Can I speak?
You may speak.
Please, thank you. Actually, the plaster itself has no asbestos in it.
The wood plaster, the plaster that they
The
put up.
plaster has no asbestos in it. It's the product that's been spread over top of the plaster.
And why wasn't that determined when they were doing it then?
I didn't do the assessment, so I really can't answer that question, why they didn't see it. That wasn't part of our scope of
It's
work.
just that, like, to my way of thinking, it's an old building, it's been renovated many times and everything else, and people, and who was ever in there doing the assessment should have realized that and drilled a little deeper. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager and then Councillor Boland.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to Council. When we move forward with these type of projects, now demolition is not like a new construct. New construct, you can control a lot tighter as to what your cost is because you know the material that you're using and you know the process and moving forward. In getting ready for us to go to tender on this building, we rely on experts in the field to do the hazardous material assessments. There's not one staff member here that's qualified to go into that building and make that determination. As part of our due diligence, we went forward and hired a firm that has that capabilities and that expertise to provide us with information to provide any potential contractor who's bidding on the work, the volume of hazardous materials in that building. As indicated, we had the assessor come in on 2 occasions to go through that building to do that assessment for us. That then formed the basis on which the contractor moved forward and submitted his bid. So when the volumes changed, when we became, or he became aware that in fact there is more hazardous materials in the building than what was originally assessed, we brought the third party back in to do that assessment. And we've done it a 4th time to do the 4th assessment. There's nobody in this room that would have the expertise to understand that or determine those volumes. We rely on a third party to give us that. So the situation evolved from the what was estimated to now what we further estimate to be the hazardous materials in that building. So the process has been very appropriate for the type of project that we had undertaken to demolish an old hotel, as everybody knows, with multiple layers, multiple configurations in the room. It was with the best information that we had that we moved forward, as did the contractor. WorkSafe is very, very clear on what you need to do when you establish that you've entered into an area where there's more hazardous waste material. That was one of the challenges we had around of the facilities that was the gymnastics club used, was that the legislation also changed in WorkSafe as to how you deal with hazardous materials. Gone are the days where you can just take a wrecking ball and whack the building, it all comes down, you bundle it up and you take it away. Unfortunately, these days, the hazardous material assessment is key to how this project moves forward. Are we done yet with hazardous assessment? I don't know. We won't know until we keep on moving forward into this building. Your experience with the Fort Hotel was if this had gone into private hands, they would be dealing with exactly the same situation that we're dealing with today. A private contractor moving into that building to either renovate or demolish would be up against the same challenges. I suspect over a period of time that the private owner of that building would probably say it's just not worth my return on investment to keep on with this project. And we would be at this point doing the same job 2, 3, 4 years down the road as we did with the Fort Hotel. I think that was one of the reasons why council took the preemptive action in order to purchase the building, to make sure that we can control the outcome of this particular project. The fact that it has hazardous material in it is a fact. We have to address it, we have to manage it, we have to move forward with it. The process we have undertaken to date has been absolutely, without doubt in my mind, a fair process. We've included all the experts and the expertise that we needed in order to make decisions to move forward. And we'll continue to do that. The costs are staggering. All of us take a look at those costs, and certainly none of us are happy with those costs. But I do have confidence in our staff, and certainly the contractor we have a long history with, that we're making the best choices and decisions we can make with the information that we have.
Thank you. Councillor Boland.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thank you, City Manager. And I understand that. The issue I have is we hired a consultant, not a contractor, we hired a consultant to do a job to tell us where this is going to wind up. They, according to what I'm reading, and according to an $823,000 increase, did not do that for us. And I get you're going to miss stuff. But the point of hiring a consultant is to protect that budget item that we laid out at $1.5 million. Not because we can increase it, not because we've got the money to cover it. The contractor is a bystander in what the actual issue is. The actual issue is what we hired to have done by the consultant was not done. At this stage in time, I'm not comfortable moving forward with this recommendation until we get legal advice on the situation.
Okay. Councillor Clausen.
Thanks, Your Worship. I think Councillor Boland said a lot of what I was going to say. A lot of what I guess my questions are is looking back, and like even the comment that they couldn't do a proper assessment because there were residents in there, and I'm not sure why we didn't put a hold till they were out so they could do a proper assessment. I don't know, again, exactly what the contingency numbers were, and obviously, again, there are unseen issues as you do something like this. So even if we had, and I don't think we ever would have had this large of a contingency, but even knowing that there are those expenses, I guess a question again, looking back, and then I just got one question looking forward. Is there no not liability, that's too serious of a word probably, but no accountability on those people that do the assessments, which it goes back to Councillor Boland's comment. I mean, like he said, we're relying on them to advise us so that we can build our RFP and put out get the companies to bid. Is there they hold no responsibility or accountability for saying, yeah, everything looks reasonable, and then it isn't?
So I'm wondering if we should have that conversation offline.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I would advise that is something we get some legal advice on.
Okay, so just my one, and this you'll probably say the same thing to this then. And again, I guess it goes a little bit towards what Councillor Boland's talking about. What are our options moving forward? We're kind of stuck here now, so I guess that's my question.
We can table this decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I make one comment? Based on reading about 5,000 of these reports over the last 27 years, you're probably going to find that on the last page of the report, every one of them have a disclaimer.
Sure, and we'll
yeah.
find out what
And
that.
Your Worship, I'd like to answer Councillor Clausen's question about the non-vacant date. So we had set a date to take possession of the hotel, and that date came, and the owners of the hotel had not vacated the property. That's how that first assessment happened with an occupied building. So we had to extend the possession date to allow the vendors to actually clear the building. There was a personal tragedy in there and things like that that made it impossible for them to meet the obligation of the purchase agreement. So that's part of how this all started.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So I'm not going to go through my list of questions, et cetera. I think that what we need to do is just table this conversation until
Second, Your
we've
Worship.
had well, that's what I'm thinking. Legal advice.
Made clear to us.
Legal advice and further discussion.
So,
Basically, we need to know what our options are.
yeah, so a lot of the questions have been focusing on getting some legal advice on the situation as it stands, so tabling until after we have.
So getting legal advice on the consultant that did the initial assessment.
Yep. Moved and seconded, please.
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay, and there's no conversation other than in favor, opposed, carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, we've got a few more minutes. Admin report number 2318. Oh, I need this now. Councillor Boland.
Thanks, Your Worship. Make the recommendation that the mayor be authorized to attend the Heart Mind Conference, Take Care of Yourself, the Science